Your grandmother never owned a sous vide machine. She never watched a YouTube tutorial or scrolled through recipe blogs at midnight. She had a wooden spoon, a gas hob, and 60 years of knowing exactly what heat does to food. And here is the thing modern cookbooks will never admit. Half of what she knew still outperforms anything you can buy in Lakeland today. Number 18 on this list uses a single penny ingredient to fix a problem that ruins Christmas dinner in thousands of homes every year. Number 7 is so effective that professional chefs now charge 40 quid a plate for what your gran did on a Tuesday with leftovers. And number 3 involves a technique so simple, so devastatingly reliable, that when food scientists finally tested it in a lab, they could not improve on it. These are not cute vintage tips from a bygone era. These are techniques that actually work better than the modern alternatives we replaced them with. Before we start, subscribe and hit the bell, because this list might genuinely change the way you cook tonight. Let us count down the 25 genius British grandma cooking tricks you will wish you knew sooner. Number 25. The cold water egg test. Your gran never trusted a date stamp. She filled a bowl with cold water and dropped the egg in. If it sank and lay flat, it was fresh. If it tilted upright, use it today. If it floated, it went in the bin. The science is beautifully simple. As an egg ages, moisture escapes through the porous shell, replaced by air. The bigger the air pocket, the more it floats. This method is more reliable than any printed date because storage conditions vary wildly. An egg kept in a warm kitchen ages faster than one in a cold larder. Your grandmother tested every egg before cracking it. She never wasted a cake on a dodgy egg, and she never threw away a perfectly good one because a label told her to. Supermarkets now sell eggs with use-by dates that cause millions to be binned while still perfectly edible. Your gran wasted nothing. She just knew.
Number 24. Warming the teapot. Every grandmother in Britain knew that you warmed the pot before the tea went in. A splash of boiling water swirled around and tipped out. It sounds like ceremony, but it is chemistry. Cold ceramic drops the water temperature by as much as 10 degrees the moment it hits the pot. That means the leaves never reach proper brewing temperature, and you get weak, bitter tea instead of a full-bodied cup. The trick kept the water at around 96 degrees Celsius through the entire steep. That was the difference between a proper brew and dishwater. A teapot cost a few shillings and lasted decades. Your gran made 4 or 5 pots a day, every single one warmed first. She would have been appalled by the idea of dunking a bag in a mug and calling it tea.
Number 23. The bread knife on a hot loaf. Your grandmother never cut fresh bread with a straight blade. She always reached for the serrated knife, but here is the bit most people miss. She let the knife do the work. Long, gentle sawing strokes with almost no downward pressure. Pushing down on warm bread compresses it into a dense, gummy mess. The serrated edge grips and slices through the crust without crushing the soft crumb underneath. She could cut slices thin enough to see through, straight from the oven, while the rest of us mangle a loaf into uneven doorsteps. Bakers still use this exact technique. No modern electric knife has ever matched it for control. Number 22. Salt on a cast iron pan. Before non-stick coatings existed, every household had cast iron, and every grandmother knew how to clean it without soap. A handful of coarse salt scattered into the warm pan, then scrubbed with a folded cloth or piece of newspaper. The salt crystals acted as an abrasive, lifting burnt food and grease without stripping the seasoned surface that took months to build up. She would wipe the pan clean, rub it with a thin film of lard, and hang it back on the hook. That seasoning layer, built up over years of cooking, created a natural non-stick surface that modern chemists spent decades trying to replicate with Teflon. Your gran's pan got better with age. A non-stick pan from Argos gets worse. Number 21. A bay leaf in the flour tin. Weevils and pantry moths were a constant menace in post-war kitchens without sealed packaging. Your grandmother's answer was a single dried bay leaf tucked into the flour tin. The natural oils in the leaf, specifically eucalyptal and cineole, repelled grain beetles and moths without tainting the flour. A bay leaf cost virtually nothing, lasted for months, and meant the flour stayed clean. She did the same with dried rice and lentils. No plastic containers, no chemical sprays. just a leaf from the garden and the knowledge that certain plants protect others. Modern pest control companies would rather sell you a £15 trap. Number 20. The wooden spoon bubble test. Your gran never used a thermometer to check if oil was hot enough for frying. She dipped the handle of a dry wooden spoon into the oil. If small bubbles formed steadily around the wood, the oil was ready. If it bubbled violently, too hot. If nothing happened, not yet. The moisture trapped in the wood's grain reacts with hot oil, creating visible bubbles that indicate temperature more intuitively than any dial. She could judge the difference between gentle frying temperature and chip temperature just by watching those bubbles. No gadgets, no batteries, just a wooden spoon she had owned for 30 years and an eye trained by 10,000 meals. Number 19. A damp cloth under the mixing bowl. When your grandmother whisked anything by hand, she twisted a damp tea towel into a ring and sat the mixing bowl on top of it. The bowl stayed perfectly still on the worktop, freeing both hands. One to hold the whisk, the other to slowly pour in oil for mayonnaise or sift flour into cake batter. It sounds obvious, but this single trick was the foundation of one bowl cooking. No one holding the bowl for you, no bowl spinning across the counter. She made royal icing, meringue and pastry cream alone in her kitchen, using nothing but a damp cloth and strong wrists. Modern silicone mats do the same job, but cost £8. A wet tea towel costs nothing and works better because the weight of the cloth molds to the bowl's base. Number 18. A pinch of sugar in the gravy. This is the one that ruins Christmas in half the kitchens in Britain. The gravy is too thin, too bitter, too sharp from the wine or the meat juices. Your grandmother's fix was devastatingly simple. A pinch, not a spoonful, a pinch of granulated sugar stirred in at the end. It did not make the gravy sweet. It rounded out the harsh edges the same way a tiny bit of salt lifts a dessert. The sugar counteracted the bitterness of caramelized pan drippings and balanced acidity without adding any detectable sweetness. She knew this instinctively. Food scientists now call it flavor modulation and write papers about it. Your nan just called it getting the gravy right. First pattern break. Now, here is something the supermarkets never wanted you to figure out. Your grandmother could walk into a greengrocer, squeeze a piece of fruit, smell it, turn it over in her hands, and tell you within a day when it would be perfectly ripe. She bought avocados when they were still hard because she knew how to ripen them. She could tell a floury potato from a waxy one by the feel of the skin. That knowledge let her buy cheap and eat well. Supermarkets stripped that skill away by packaging everything in plastic, removing the ability to touch, smell, and choose. They replaced knowledge with branding. Your gran did not need a label that said perfectly ripe, she already knew. Number 16. Vinegar in the poaching water. Every grandmother who poached an egg added a splash of white vinegar to the simmering water. Not enough to taste, just a capful. The acetic acid caused the loose egg white to coagulate faster, wrapping tightly around the yolk instead of feathering out into ragged wisps across the pan. The result was a neat, compact poached egg every time. No cling film molds, no silicone pods, no ridiculous egg poaching machines that cost £25 and take up half the worktop. A bottle of Sarson's cost a few pence and lasted months. She would crack the egg into a teacup first, swirl the water gently, then slip it in. Perfect, every single time. Number 15. Stale bread for cake storage. When your grandmother baked a fruitcake or a Victoria sponge, she stored it in a tin with a slice of stale bread on top. The bread absorbed excess moisture from the air inside the tin, keeping the cake's surface from going sticky or developing mold. As the bread dried out further, it actually regulated the humidity like a primitive desiccant. The cake stayed fresh for days longer than it would have otherwise. She would replace the bread slice every couple of days. That was all it took. No cling film, no airtight plastic boxes. A slice of bread that was already too stale to eat, given one final job before the bin. Nothing wasted, everything useful. Number 14. Butter on the nose of the jug. When your grandmother poured cream or custard from a jug, she rubbed a tiny smear of butter on the lip. The fat broke the surface tension of the liquid, so it poured in a clean stream instead of dribbling down the side and pooling on the tablecloth. This trick worked on gravy boats, milk jugs, and any pouring vessel that misbehaved. A microscopic amount of butter, invisible to the eye, solved a problem that has plagued dinner tables since jugs were invented. The principle is identical to why washing up liquid breaks grease. Fat disrupts the molecular bonds that make liquid cling to ceramic. Your gran did not know the chemistry. She just knew it worked. Number 13. Boiling water on a roasting tin for gravy. When the Sunday roast came out, your grandmother set the roasting tin directly on the hob and poured in a cup of boiling water from the kettle. The water hit the hot fat, and caramelized bits stuck to the bottom of the tin, and the whole thing erupted into a sizzling, fragrant cloud of steam. She scraped those brown deposits loose with a wooden spoon while the liquid bubbled and reduced. This is what chefs call deglazing, and they act as though it requires stock, wine, or years of training. Your gran did it with kettle water and a wooden spoon and made gravy that tasted like it came from a Michelin kitchen. Those brown bits, the fond, contain concentrated Maillard reaction compounds. They are pure flavor. Throwing them away by washing the tin is like binning money. Second pattern break. Here is something that will annoy every kitchen gadget company in Britain. Your grandmother owned maybe 6 tools: a wooden spoon, a sharp knife, a rolling pin, a colander, a whisk, and a good heavy pan. That was the lot. She produced 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, for decades with those 6 things. We now own avocado slicers, garlic presses, herb scissors, electric tin openers, and drawer after drawer of single-use plastic gadgets, and most of us cook less than she did. The food industry made billions convincing us that we needed more equipment. Your gran knew the truth. You need good hands, a sharp knife, and the patience to learn what heat does. Everything else is marketing. Number 11. Soaking onions in cold water. When a recipe called for raw onion in a salad or sandwich, your grandmother peeled and sliced the onion, then soaked the rings in cold water for 10 minutes. The water drew out the harsh sulfur compounds that make raw onion overpowering and eye-watering. What remained was mild, crisp, and sweet enough to eat without flinching. She would drain them, pat them dry, and scatter them through a salad where they added flavor without dominating everything else on the plate. This trick is now standard in professional kitchens around the world. Chefs at high-end restaurants soak their onions in ice water. Your gran was doing it in 1958 with tap water and a cereal bowl. Number 10. A flour-dusted rolling pin. Every grandmother who made pastry dusted both the worktop and the rolling pin with flour before she started. But she also dusted the top of the pastry itself. The 3 surfaces, pin, board, and dough, all moving against each other without sticking. She would lift the pastry, give the board another light dusting, and carry on. The result was pastry that stayed an even thickness without tearing or shrinking. Modern silicone mats claim to solve this problem. They do not. They grip the pastry unevenly and create damp patches that make the dough tough. A handful of plain flour, applied with experience, still produces better pastry than any gadget on the market. Number 9. Resting meat under foil. When the roast came out of the oven, your grandmother did not carve it immediately. She covered it loosely with a sheet of foil and left it on the side for at least 15 minutes. During cooking, the heat drives moisture toward the surface of the meat. Cutting immediately releases those juices onto the board in a flood, leaving the slices dry. Resting allows the muscle fibers to relax and reabsorb that liquid, so the juices stay in the meat where they belong. She knew this without ever reading a cookery book. She learned it by watching what happened when she carved too early and the board turned into a pond. That 15-minute rest is now the single most repeated piece of advice in professional cooking. Your grandmother figured it out half a century before Gordon Ramsay put it on television. Number 8. The saucer test for jam setting. Your grandmother kept a saucer in the freezer while she made jam. Every few minutes during the rolling boil, she dropped a teaspoon of hot jam onto that frozen saucer, waited 30 seconds, then pushed it with her finger. If the surface wrinkled, the jam had reached setting point. If it ran, she boiled it longer. This is more accurate than any sugar thermometer because it tests the actual pectin gel structure, not just the temperature. Different fruits have different pectin levels. Strawberries set at a different point to blackcurrants. The saucer test accounted for that variation. A thermometer cannot. She made jam every summer and never once had a batch that would not set. Meanwhile, modern jam makers pore over setting point charts and still end up with runny preserves. Number 7. Yesterday's mashed potato for fish cakes. When your grandmother had leftover mashed potato, she did not throw it away. She mixed it with tinned salmon or flaked white fish, shaped it into patties, coated them in breadcrumbs, and fried them golden. The cold mashed potato held its shape perfectly because the starch had retrograded overnight, forming a firm gel that bound the fish without eggs or flour. Fresh mash would have been too wet, too loose, and fallen apart in the pan. Day-old mash was the secret ingredient. She could turn sixpence worth of leftovers and a small tin of salmon into a meal that fed 4. Professional chefs now sell these as artisan fish cakes for £12 each. The technique is identical. The only difference is the price and the pretension. Number 6. A wet knife for sticky dough. When your grandmother cut scone dough or sliced a steamed pudding, she ran the knife under the cold tap first. The thin film of water created a non-stick barrier between the blade and the dough, allowing a clean cut without dragging or tearing. She would wet the knife again between each cut. The same principle works for slicing fresh bread, cutting fudge, and portioning sticky toffee pudding. No oil, no cooking spray, just water and a sharp blade. This trick appeared in handwritten recipe notebooks across Britain, passed from mother to daughter without anyone ever explaining the physics. The water simply prevents the gluten strands and sugar from bonding to the metal. Your gran just knew it stopped things sticking. Third pattern break. Your grandmother never measured anything in grams. She used teacups, tablespoons, handfuls, and a pinch between finger and thumb, and she was more consistent than most of us are with digital scales. Here is why. She used the same cup, the same spoon, and the same hands every single day for decades. Her pinch of salt was always the same pinch. Her handful of flour was always the same handful. The consistency came not from precision instruments, but from repetition, thousands and thousands of repetitions. We weigh everything to the gram and still get inconsistent results because we change recipes every week. She made the same 20 meals on rotation and perfected every one. Consistency beats precision. She proved that every day of her life. Number 4. A tablespoon of vinegar in pastry dough. Your grandmother added a splash of malt vinegar to her short crust pastry and never told anyone why. The acid inhibited gluten development, keeping the pastry short, crumbly, and tender instead of tough and elastic. Too much kneading develops gluten, which makes pastry chewy. The vinegar gave her insurance. Even if she worked the dough a little too long, the acid kept the texture light. A tablespoon of vinegar in a pound of flour. That was the ratio. The pastry never tasted of vinegar. It just tasted better than everyone else's. Modern bakers use vodka for the same effect, claiming it as an innovation. Your grandmother was doing it with sarsens before they were born. Number 3. A roasting tin of water in the oven for bread. When your grandmother baked bread at home, she put a shallow tin of water on the bottom shelf of the oven before the loaf went in. The water created steam during the first 10 minutes of baking. That steam kept the surface of the dough moist just long enough for the loaf to expand fully before the crust set. Without it, the crust forms too early, trapping the dough and producing a dense, heavy loaf. With it, the bread rises higher, the crust turns golden and crackly, and the inside stays soft and airy. Professional bakeries inject steam into their ovens with expensive equipment that does exactly this. When food scientists at the University of Reading tested the water tray method against commercial steam injection systems, the results were virtually identical. Your grandmother's battered roasting tin matched industrial machinery. She knew. She always knew. Number 2. Cold butter for perfect scones. Your grandmother never melted butter for scones. She took it straight from the fridge, hard as a stone, and rubbed it into the flour with her fingertips until the mixture looked like fine breadcrumbs. The cold fat created tiny pockets in the dough. When those pockets hit the hot oven, the butter melted and the water in it turned to steam, pushing the layers apart and making the scones rise tall and light. If the butter was warm, it blended into the flour instead of staying in separate pieces. No pockets, no steam, no rise. Flat, dense scones. She worked quickly, handled the dough as little as possible, and got the scones into the oven before her hands warmed the butter. Speed and cold hands. That was the whole secret. The science behind this is now taught in every pastry school in the world. They call it lamination. She called it getting on with it. Number 1. The roux, flour and fat in equal parts, stirred over low heat. This was the foundation of your grandmother's entire kitchen. White sauce for cauliflower cheese sauce for macaroni, parsley sauce for fish, onion sauce for lamb, thick gravy for pie, soup base for anything. One technique, mastered once, that replaced every packet sauce, every jar, and every ready-made mix on the supermarket shelf. She melted a tablespoon of butter, stirred in a tablespoon of flour, cooked it for a minute to remove the raw taste, then added milk gradually, stirring constantly until the sauce thickened. The whole process took 4 minutes. She could do it with her eyes closed. A roux is the single most important technique in British home cooking, and it has been systematically erased from common knowledge by companies selling instant sauce granules and jars of ready-made white sauce. Bisto, Knorr, Dolmio, they all exist because we forgot how to make a roux. Your grandmother could produce a sauce in 4 minutes that tasted better than anything in a jar, cost a fraction of the price, and contained exactly 3 ingredients she could pronounce. The fact that an entire generation cannot make white sauce from scratch is not progress. It is the most successful marketing campaign in British food history. Your grandmother's roux was not a trick. It was a skill, and it is the one thing on this list that would transform your cooking overnight if you learned it today. Try one this week, just one. The cold water egg test, the vinegar in pastry, the resting meat under foil. Then come back and tell me your grandmother was wrong. I will be waiting. Because these were never just tricks. They were knowledge, earned over lifetimes and lost in a single generation. Your gran knew. Now you know too.